Hi, we'd like to welcome you to another in a series of webinars designed for departments of transportation. I'm Terry Bills, the Transportation Industry Manager here at Esri, and today I'm joined by Keith King, who's a Senior Consultant on our Transportation Delivery team, and by Stacia Taggart, who's the System of Engagement Program Lead here at Esri. So today, we'd like to again present the concept of a system of engagement for DOTs. We really have found such success with this concept and this approach that we almost consider it really a new type of successful GIS implementation designed to transform large agencies. And ironically, it's based on what we think is a rather simple proposition, that the real value of technology comes when everyone in an organization feels empowered by having access to authoritative information and applications which allow them to do their job more efficiently and to make better decisions. So I hope you'll come away from today's webinar with a deeper understanding of exactly how we execute on that concept. Before we begin, I would like to point out that we are recording this webinar, and while everyone will be on mute, there will be time for question and answers at the end of the presentation. You can type your questions into the question box and we'll try to answer as many as time allows. Additionally, the slides, which are part of this webinar, will be available to you on the GeoNet group, Departments of Transportation, and we'll post the webinar on our website within the next couple of days for others who may not have been able to attend today. So to start off, for those of you who are not familiar with the concept of a system of engagement and the way that we use the term for highways agencies, let me give you a quick and very, very high level overview. You can find a variety of resources at the link listed on this page. We do have a separate website, and we'll give you links to a variety of other resources at the end of the webinar. So at heart, a system of engagement is really a new way of thinking about how we implement technology in large organizations, and ultimately how we empower everyone within a DOT with the data, the maps, and the applications they need to do their job more efficiently. And it really emerges out of two major trends within the IT industry. And the first had to do with the way in which technology projects were implemented, let's say 5 to 10 years ago. These were often one-off large custom implementations that took several years between concept and delivery, and quite often did not really meet the needs of the agency by the time they were ultimately delivered. As a result, many in the industry began to look at more agile development methods that could deliver value much faster and with significantly less cost. And then secondly, many agencies began to look at technology as a way of doing more with less, and that's especially the case in today's environment. So often we refer to it under the names of digital transformation. Many agencies came to see technology as the only way they could meet their goals and objectives within declining budgets. So as we began to look at how to make everyone more productive and how we could move from manual to digital processes. So I think you'll see those two trends emerging from our presentations today, but let me start off and let me turn this over to Keith that's going to dive into explaining the concept. So Keith, over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Terry, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So we appreciate you giving us some time today to hear about the system of engagement. So Stacia and I, we're going to hand off a couple of times here, and Stacia is going to provide some examples of the types of applications that typically can get deployed in a system of engagement, and I'll talk a little bit about the concept and how we actually go about implementing a system of engagement. But let me jump in with just 3 key points, 3 things to remember about the system of engagement. And the first one, it is about applications to help individuals do their job better. So a couple of things here, you know, when I say app or applications, think of the applications we use every day on our smartphones. Those types of applications, we don't need to go to training. We don't need to read a manual. We download and utilize those applications to help us in our personal lives. Well, that expectation is moving into the workplace. And we want to be able to deliver those types of targeted, focused applications that really help folks with their productivity, help them do their job better. And when I talk about this, I think of a person named Drew that I met in Florida a few years ago. He's a maintenance crew chief, and he talked to me about how he had problems knowing where there were maintenance agreements in place. You see, the DOT would form these agreements with local towns, and he'd be out in the field and see work that needs to get done, but he had no idea if that work, in some cases, he did not have an idea if that asset was covered by a maintenance agreement or not. So he had a choice: either do the work and take the chance of doing work that he did not need to perform, or drive clear back into the office, look it up, and then go back out and address the issue if necessary. The types of applications we're talking about here puts something in Drew's hands so he can look up in an instant to determine whether or not an asset is covered by a maintenance agreement with the municipality, and he can make a decision right there in the field in almost an instant as to whether or not he needs to address that issue. So that's what we're talking about. And it's not just apps in the field, it's all kinds of different applications that are work in the office and in the field. So that's number one, producing apps to help individuals do their job better. The second thing that the system of engagement does is it provides a roadmap for establishing a resilient, flexible technology and data ecosystem. At the end of the day, as we go through the process of implementing and rolling out these apps, this ecosystem is stood up incrementally. It's done in a way that it's very robust when it's all said and done, but it's done in a way that also minimizes risk. And that's really important. Terry mentioned this at the onset, that we saw these big, large projects be implemented at DOTs, and only to get to the end of those technology projects, and folks weren't all that excited about it. The users weren't excited about what was delivered. And so there's a lot of time and money invested in it, and less than desirable results. Well, the process that we go through mitigates that particular risk. It makes sure that the technology that is deployed for a reason. It's deployed to help individuals and the organization really perform at a higher level. And then finally, the third point is this idea of embedding the vision of leadership in day-to-day operations. We talk to leaders in the DOT space, and there are goals and objectives that are set in place. And the idea, or the challenge is, however, is how do you get that vision operationalized? And we can help with that with the system of engagement. We go through a process to make sure that the vision, the roadmap that senior leadership has set out is considered as we go through this implementation process with the system of engagement. So you can imagine, if we can accomplish these three things, right, it's pretty profound. And we've seen exactly that as we worked with various DOTs and other organizations around the country. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn it over to Stacia, and she is going to give an example of the types of applications that we're talking about here. And I know, Stacia, you have 3 applications you're going to show here, I think, today, but this is just a taste of it, because typically there are, hundreds of these types of applications that are possible. So with that, let me just go ahead and turn it over to Stacia, and you can take it away, Stacia.
Thanks, Keith. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. So Keith talked about, making apps available that are focused on individual users. But, what happens if you have all of these different apps? How do you find the app that you need? That's why we have this concept of 3 clicks or less, getting to your maps, apps, and data in 3 clicks or less. And that's why this is so important. And that's what this portal is all about. So you can see up here on the top right of the screen, you can see I'm logged into this portal. So as I scroll down this page, I'm only going to see the maps, apps, and data that are available to me. And as I get down here to the bottom, I see some applications that are available to me. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the Project Summary Explorer. So let's say I am a communications director. This app helps me when I get those calls on 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon asking me how many projects we have in Senate District 24 and how much money is being spent there, which usually makes everybody in my department frantic because they're trying to compile all kinds of information from different data sources, and they're trying to do it before they leave for the weekend. But now, with this app, I have that information available to me at my fingertips. So for example, right here, you can see all of the projects in my state. But I can also click into an individual project and I can see details about that project. So I can see the type of project, I can see the status of a project, and I can see cost information about the project. I can also filter projects by status. So I can select projects that are active, projects that are under construction. And I'll hit apply, and I'll see my map change. And now I'm just seeing projects that are active or under construction in my state. In addition, if I want to see a summary of all of the information for my Senate District 24, I can click on this tool here at the bottom, and I can select Senate District 24. Whoops, let's do 24. And my map zooms into that area, and you can see all of these numbers, all of these summaries at the bottom change to just add up the costs for that particular Senate district. And once again, I can click on an individual project and I can see detailed project information.
Yeah, so Stacy, if I could just jump in here real fast. So this particular app, it really does one thing. It provides information on projects around the state. And that's the whole idea. It's targeted, it's focused, it supports a particular workflow. It's really helpful for the folks who needed to answer those questions that were coming out of the State House. In fact, it's so easy to use that maybe they don't even need to answer those questions anymore. They can just provide the app to the folks who are asking the questions and let them get the information themselves. That's how easy this app is to use. And this is the concept that we're talking about when we mention rolling out apps to help individuals do their job better.
Yeah, that's the ideal, right? Enable people to help themselves. So I'm gonna switch roles now, and now I work in a traffic management center. So I'm gonna open this traffic operations dashboard. And as a traffic management operator, I need to know what's going on the roads right now. And I need to use a lot of different data from a lot of different sources in order to be able to effectively communicate and make decisions to keep traffic moving and keep people safe. And so I used to have no less than like 20 browser tabs open on each of my 3 or 4 monitors, in addition to the dozen or so screens that are on the wall of the operations center. And I was constantly switching back and forth between screens, between apps, between tabs, instead of what I really wanted, which was to view all of that information in the same location. So that's where this traffic operations dashboard comes in. The first thing you'll notice here in the upper left-hand corner is Waze data. For those of you that aren't familiar with Waze data, this is crowdsourced information that Google shares freely with state and local governments. Here we're going to see Waze alerts that are currently active in my map extent. You can see various types of alerts, such as accidents, car stopped on shoulder, hazards in the road. You can also see delay information. And next, I'm going to click on an incident tab. This tab is bringing data in from here on road closures and construction projects. But here in Colorado, traffic can be greatly impacted by the weather. So we're always watching the weather. So if I click on this Weather Watches tab, I can see all of the active weather watches in the state, which there aren't any at the moment. And I can also see active weather warnings. But what I really want to call your attention to is this tab down at the bottom for significant weather observations. This is a list of our WIS stations reporting conditions that meet certain criteria that cause us to be on alert, such as wind speed greater than 30 miles per hour, friction less than 0.69, or surface conditions that are wet, icy, or snowy. And I can click on an individual RWIS station, and my map is going to zoom me into that portion of the state. I'll click it again and it'll take me back to my original extent. What's also really helpful is if I can actually see and visualize what's going on a road at any particular time. So as I zoom in, you can see all of these camera icons pop up. And now I can see the stationary traffic cameras, and I can see what the actual conditions of traffic are on the road at that time. Another feature that I really like is being able to see the variable message boards that are all over the state. And I can click on a variable message board and see everything that's on that board. I can evaluate whether or not it's accurate, whether or not we need to change it. And lastly, what is really important here in Colorado is the snow, especially this time of year. And so I'm going to click on my layer list here, and I'm going to turn on snow plows. And as I turn on snow plows, you can see these red circles with the white arrows show up. These are the actual current locations of snow plows in the state. And I can click on a snowplow and I can see some information about that snowplow, such as its heading and whether or not the plow is active.
All right, hey, Stacia, so if I could just jump in here on a couple of areas. So this is a pretty cool app, but I want to just point back to this idea of this technology ecosystem as one of our 3 key points, because as Stacia went through this, you may have noticed that she talked about data from a third-party weather feed, from Waze, from internal RWIZ stations, AVL, and I think also you even have some video cameras up there. I didn't see you turn that on, Stacia.
Right.
But the point is that those are what, 5 or 6 different systems that are in the DOT that are being brought together using GIS, and the reason that can occur is because each of the data sets in those disparate systems, they all have a location component, which means we can represent them on a map. And when we can represent them on a map and we can leverage that location component and then visualize that data in context to the user, but not just visualize the data, we can also do some math on the data, do some analytics, which Stacia showed, right? So those RWIZ stations, the data coming out of those in the lower left, right? We wanted to look at the ones that we're most interested in, right? Ones that are falling out of some specification. So now we're starting to see how if we have this connected, resilient technology ecosystem, how powerful it can be really across the board.
Awesome. Thanks, Keith.
Thank you.
So I'm going to switch roles one more time, and I am going to attempt to fill the shoes of a design engineer, and I'm designing a project. And in order to do that, I need to learn everything I can about the project's location, because I want to be smart about the way we're doing work. I want to make sure we're addressing all of the issues that may be present in an area. So I know there's a project going on I-65. So I'm going to go ahead and search for that project. And what you're going to see is my map zooms into that project, so it shows me the project boundaries, but look what else it's showing me. It's showing me all of the assets along the road in that project area. Here in the map, I can see those assets, but I can also see them here in a list, in groupings based on the asset type. So let's go ahead and click on attenuator. I can click on attenuators. I see all the attenuators in this area. I can click on an individual attenuator, and I see that one highlight in the map here in yellow. So maybe this attenuator has a poor score, and I want to add that attenuator to my project. So there's other information here that we can look into, such as pavement cores. So if I drill into a particular pavement core, again, I see the location of that core show up here on my map. And then I see a bunch of detailed information about the core itself, including here at the bottom, a picture of that core, which I can click on and blow up if I want to take a look at that. But I'm also looking to make some safety improvements in this area. So to do that, I'm going to take advantage of some analysis that was done on crash data to see if there's any areas that I want to dig into further. So I'm going to click on my layer list, and I'm going to turn on the crash trend analysis layer. When I do that, I see all these hexagons pop up. This is the result of some pretty sophisticated spatiotemporal analysis that's been done on crash data by a trained analyst. Now, As an engineer, I don't necessarily need to know how to do all of that analysis, but I sure can use the results of that analysis to make some decisions when designing my projects. If I click on the dark hexagons, I can see that these are persistent hotspots. And if I click on the yellow hexagons, I can see these are intensifying hotspots. So maybe I need to go talk to my safety group to figure out what I need to do to address some of the safety issues in this project area.
Yeah, and Stacia, just if I could jump in here, think of the power of this type of application. That list of assets that she had up just a moment ago. I don't know if you could bring that up again,
Okay.
Stacia. But all of that data came from multiple systems. So she scrolls down through there. There might be, I don't know, 12, 13, 15 different systems. So this engineer, before they start their work, and their core competency is designing, projects. And typically they have to go and look up all of this information. They need to know everything about that project that's within that project footprint, and that can take a lot of time. So just putting this in one spot where they can get to the data in 3 clicks or less is a huge deal. The other thing I'll just point out on that safety analysis, we see over and over again around the country, folks are doing all kinds of fantastic analysis, safety and otherwise. The challenge is getting it out to make it as useful and as valuable to the larger organization as possible. And Stacia just demonstrated how that can be done with this particular app. By exposing that safety analysis, showing that engineer where they have hot spots within their project footprint, that can help them, it can inform their design decisions as they move forward. So not only, I guess, just a final, put the final touch on this, not only are we bringing data together, but we're also bringing, relevant analysis together too, and putting it in context to the individual who needs it. So
Yeah,
is that it, Stacia?
That'd be it.
Okay. All right, well, I'm going to take back over then, and we're going to move past the apps and talk a little bit about the concept of the system of engagement. So I want to talk about our approach and then some next steps, like how do you get this thing moving forward. So let me start with some Lego blocks. I like to compare this approach to Lego blocks, and think about a Lego block for a moment. It's simple. It's easy to understand, the individual block itself, but it's designed to be connected to other Lego blocks. And if you have enough Lego blocks, you can build this big, complex structure. Well, apps, which really are a key part of our approach, are much the same. By themselves, they're simple to understand, simple to use, they're targeted in nature, but they also are designed to be connected together. So if you have the right applications in place, you can support a complex workflow that has a lot of different people engaged in that workflow. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. A few years ago, Irma went through the state of Florida. And as a result of that, damage assessments had to be done on just about every bridge in the state. So we had, so this is a workflow. This is a large workflow with a lot of stakeholders, but let's look at 2 stakeholders in this workflow. The first are the boots on the ground, the folks who actually needed to go out and perform the inspections, likely maintenance crews. Well, those folks, they needed tools to help them with their role, with their responsibility, which was inspecting the bridges. And they need to answer some questions, take some pictures, and then move on to their next assignment. So the folks down at FDOT, Jared and his team, they stood up an application, a mobile application to help those folks in the field get that task done. Now, another part of the workflow are the folks back in the operations center who are working hard to recover and making decisions on how best to recover from the storm. What they need is they need the information from the field in a format that they can understand and be able to take action on that data. So there was a dashboard stood up for those folks. So the point here is that the folks in the operations center, they didn't need a mobile app, right? And the folks out in the field, they didn't need a dashboard. They all needed their their targeted application to help them support their part of the workflow. And yes, these are like two Lego blocks because they're more or less connected together. The folks in the field, when they hit the submit button on that mobile app, that data immediately becomes available on the dashboard. And if this is a screenshot and I can't interact with it, but these folks can, if on the live app, they can click on a dot and they can pull up the pictures, they can pull up the individual questionnaires and so on and so forth. Now, this connection of these applications presumes that the person in the field is connected to a cell phone signal or Wi-Fi. But if they're not, when they hit the submit button, that data will get stored on their phone, and when they are reconnected on a network, then the data will be pushed to the dashboard. Now, so we've talked about users, and users, they need application, and Stacia showed the destination, right? The place to go to get to the map app or data. Now, the approach that we take is, this is something that we build upon, the system of engagement. We don't come in necessarily to replace anything. We want to get the most out of the systems that you own today. So we take this web services approach to connect into your existing systems of record, data from your existing business systems. And then we expose or democratize that data so that it can serve as the fuel for the applications that we identify. Now, web service. I'm betting that a lot of people on this webinar know what a web service is. Sometimes, though, when I'm talking to a non-technical audience, I'll use Google as an analogy to explain what a web service is. And so, just imagine that you are at google.com and you want to get more information about autonomous vehicles. So you type autonomous vehicles into the search bar, and back comes all this information on your screen. Now, Google doesn't download that information on your screen. What it does is it provides a link back to some authoritative source. Well, in a sense, that's what a web service is. We build these links into authoritative sources like asset management systems, like safety systems, planning systems, pavement systems, you name it, right? We build these links into those existing systems that are typical at a DOT. We expose that data, and then we utilize it in these applications. So that's the concept, that's the approach. The question is, how do we make that happen from a practical standpoint? Now, I'm about to go to a slide here, and I'm going to warn everybody that it is a busy slide. And when I put it up here, you're going to go, whoa, what is that? But hang in there with me, because I think that this will make some sense. And really, this sums up the approach for the system of engagement pretty concisely. So here we go. There's the busy slide. Now, the reason this is so busy is because this is the first 9 months of the first year implementation plan for New York State DOT when we worked with them on their system of engagement. Let me walk through a couple things on this chart just to show you what we're looking at. Across the top here, you see STIP Viewer, Safety Crash Analysis Viewer, Project Viewer, so on and so forth as we move to the right. These are all applications. These are apps that we identified in the organization. These are items or applications that folks said that they needed to help them be more efficient, make better decisions. Underneath each of these applications, these boxes, that represents work that needs to get done. It's technical work, right? It needs to be completed in order to make each of these applications operational, get them in production. So the idea is when the work is done in each of these columns, this first app, for instance, with the STIP viewer, when the work is done, that's represented by these boxes, then the STIP viewer is ready to go out the door. It's in production. We divided or organized rather the technical work into some different buckets. You can see these over to the left. So we have portal work, services work, as we were talking about a moment ago, data work, and some platform and infrastructure work. So let me just walk through a couple of points about this chart here. So I'm going to zoom into this particular area, and I want to just talk about this particular map service. So for the first app here, the STIP Viewer and Filter, we needed to build a map service to make that app work. We needed to expose some authoritative data, probably from a a planning system or multiple systems. And you can see some lines coming off of that box, upstream and downstream. Upstream obviously is pointing back to those authoritative sources. Downstream indicates, hey, there's this map service is going to be utilized in the future. So let me show you why that's significant. If we back out, you can see the arrow pointing at that map service. But look at the third application, the Project Explorer viewer, and notice that in the services tier there is no box; it's blank. What that means is we don't need to build a new map service for the viewer, for the Project Explorer viewer, because we're going to reuse one that we've already built. And just to take that concept a step further, look further downstream at those last 4 apps and look at all the white space there. Same thing. We're going to be reusing work that we've already completed to get those last 4 apps, that's on the screen anyways, out the door. So what's happening here is that this technology ecosystem that I've talked about is represented, or is being built, I should say, as we roll out the apps. And its capability, the technical capability and the data capabilities are increasing at an increasing rate. And they're being delivered just in time to make the app work. And the app gets put into somebody's hands and it's useful. So what this means is that this is why we mitigate the risk. We don't go off and build all the technology and get all the data right first. We kind of fly the airplane while we're building it. What it does is it makes sure that we stay in sync with the users, and we only do the technology work that we need, as opposed to investing all this time and money on technology and data up front, not really knowing for sure whether we need it or not. All right, let's move on and talk just briefly about the destination. Stacia showed this at the beginning. Obviously, this is where folks go to get to their app and their map and their data. In some cases, depending on the types of credentials that they have, they can actually even create their own apps. You can point back to these data sources because they're exposed and create their own apps. The other thing I just point out too is that this destination, it's where we can also register content, say from third parties. We can make that data available because we can deem it authoritative, and we want people to have access to it. And we can manage credentials as well. Basically, you can control who sees what in this destination. Let's face it, you don't want to expose data out to the world, right? Some data and some apps are sensitive, and you need to control who has access to those apps and data. This destination system that we're talking about here can take care of all that for you. All right, the approach. I'm going to show a couple of slides here on how we go about. And so what you want to get out of this next section here is kind of envision is if this is something you wanted to do in your organization, if you ultimately wanted to get to a system of engagement, this is how we get there. So we followed the Esri method. The other Esri method is understand, plan, and act. In the other understand part, this is where we go out and we engage your organization. And you can see here we have both a business track and a technical track. These are 2 separate teams, and they're 2 separate components of this overall process. So once we gather the information from the business and from the technology folks, we build a plan and then take action on that plan. I'm going to hone in just for a moment on the understand and plan part, because that's really the first step, is getting that out of the way. So the discovery, the approach that we take for the understand and plan, we build a plan and we provide you with the app definitions that we identify from users. It's a technical plan. It's going to contain some data governance and but it's also going to have training recommendations and even roles that you should think about, because yes, the system of engagement is a process, but I also like to think about it as a program. This is going to result in this engine that you can establish in your organization that just provides value for years to come. Yes, you're going to have applications that help people quickly and often throughout the process, but at the end of the day, you're going to have this technology and data ecosystem that allows you as an organization to really just continue to build these value-added products off for years and years to come. So because of that, this plan is also it's a people and process plan as much as it is a technology plan. And before I move off this, I just want to point out that when we go through this, and we get to the end of this process of the understand and the plan part, it's your plan. It's a plan that you can take and implement. Now, we've had some DOTs when we've delivered the plan, they said, Esri, this is a great plan. We want you to build a team and implement this for us. We've had other DOTs say, hey, Esri, this is a good plan and we're going to implement it, but we're going to do most of it ourselves. We might ask you to come help us now and then. We might bring in some third-party consultants. For instance, Florida DOT, that's exactly what they did. The point here is that there's a tremendous amount of value out of having this plan and understanding the pent-up needs of your organization and understanding how to build the technology and get the data right to meet those pent-up needs, and also aligning that with your leadership. That is something that is going to provide value. In fact, at Florida DOT, I don't know if Jared's on the phone today or his team, but if you ask him about the system of engagement, he's going to know what you're talking about, even though we went through this process about 3 years ago. So this is something that is it's proven value there, and I'm confident that it'll prove its proven value, every place that we do it. All right, so let's talk about some case studies. I've mentioned a few DOTs today. This whole methodology really has started in the DOT, so you can see the folks that we've worked with in the past to date. And let's look at a couple case studies. So at Texas, big state of Texas, we went through a discovery process there. You can see we talked to a lot of people. Out of the 430, I think I personally talked to about 398 of them. Did a lot of driving around the state. It's a big state, trust me. You can see, though, as we went through that business track process, we identified about 146 apps. That's a lot of applications. But not only that, we did a deep dive into 36 or more systems of record. We provided this conceptual architecture for how to roll out these applications. Made a lot of technical recommendations as part of our plan at Texas. Moving on to Colorado, again, talked to a lot of people, not quite as many as Texas. Had the privilege in Colorado to drive around about this time of the year, and it just so happened there was a blizzard, so that made it even more exciting driving through the mountains of Colorado with a blizzard on way. But we identified 87 apps at Colorado DOT. Now, whether it's 146 apps or 87 apps or even 50 apps, that's a lot. And the question is, what do you do with these applications? How do you know where to start? And I know as I talk with folks around the country, they know there's a ton of need out there, and it's a challenge just trying to pull together all those needs and try to build some kind of plan for addressing them. Well, we've addressed that issue here. So with these 87 apps, we go through a process. And whatever the number of apps are that we identify, we go through a process. And really the process is simple. The first thing we do is we ask the question, what's the value of the app to the organization? And Esri can't answer that question. So we help our customers form this prioritization team. We present the apps back to this prioritization team, and they answer the question. They quantify the value of the individual application to the organization. And at this point, we just want a high-level feel for where we stand. So what we do is we rate these apps on a 1 to 4 basis. 1 is low value, 4 is high value. So that's the first question or thing that we do with the application. The second question that we ask about the app is, how hard is it to deploy? And our team, our technical track team, answers that question. Recall, they did a deep dive on all the existing systems that are in place at the DOT, and they can basically, we as a team, we can come up and we can say, yeah, you know, this data is easy to get to. That's a configurable application, and you know, we can give it a rating. You know, maybe a lower effort rating, maybe. And again, the score is the same. It's 1 to 4, 1 being low effort and 4 being high effort. So 2 questions: how hard is it to build, and what's the value to the organization? We quantify the answers to both of those questions. Once we do that, we can put those applications into a matrix. Now, another warning, this is a busy chart. Basically, what I'm going to put up is just the name of all 87 apps that we identified at Colorado DOT in a matrix. You don't have to read this, but I want you to see the concept of what we do. So as we move along the blue line out to the right, the applications in this column 4 are harder to build. They require a higher level of effort to build. As we move up the green line toward the top, the applications in this top row, they bring higher value as compared to the applications down here below. And so now you can start to get a feel for the applications and the level of effort that's required to build them and the value they bring to the organization. And we are especially interested in the applications in this upper left-hand corner, because those are high value, low effort apps. So you can see here that that challenge that I talked about earlier, like if you as a GIS person or as a leader, you know there's a ton of pent-up demand out there, and you're aware of the needs, and you're just having problems laying out how to get all that work done. Well, here you go. This is an approach that you can take to get a lot of value early in the process and often throughout the process. Deliver tools to those business units, right, to those users that are out there that really help them. Now, while we're on, you know, these tough to view eye charts, let me just go ahead and put one more up, and I'm going to go back to that New York State DOT, you know, planning chart that I had earlier, and I just want to point something out. These applications across the top here, we went through that same process at New York State DOT. We asked, what's the value of the app to the organization and how hard is it to build? And that's what informed, that's what determined what order to put these things in, all of these apps. And that's important, because if I was to change the order of these apps or even swap one or more of them out, then all these boxes below would all reshuffle. And what that tells you is that the technology is being deployed to support the app. But the app is what the users have told us that they need to do their job better. So the technology stays linked to the user. And we don't fall into this trap, which happens in way too many projects, even when I've been involved in the past, where we lose track of the user and we start working on technology for technology's sake. In this case here, we stay linked to those end users. It's really impossible not to stay linked with them. Okay, so let me just close things out here, a couple closing thoughts. And you know, that the way we move forward with the system of engagement is we do kickoff, presentation, business interviews, technical interviews. We go through that app ranking process, and then we deliver a plan. So about a 12-week process in whole. And again, once you get that plan, that plan is yours, and you can determine how you want to take action on the plan itself. Our experience tells us that as we go and engage the business units in the districts and in the divisions at the DOT, folks are just so appreciative of it because they know there's some opportunities to utilize modern applications, and they know when they are not working efficiently, and they want to work efficiently. And when we go through this process of talking with them about what they do for a living and fleshing out some of those challenges that they have, and then matching up those challenges with capabilities that exist in the Esri technology that you probably already own today, and then building that plan, and then the folks that we talk to see their ideas in the plan, it is powerful, very powerful. And there's a level of energy that is created by going through this process. And it's a valuable process, whether or not you choose Esri to move forward and act on this plan, or if you take some other route. All right, so I'm going to close where I started, the system of engagement and what it's all about. So we've been talking a lot about applications. Number one, these applications help people do their job better. That's a key part of this. It also helps you build out that technology ecosystem, and also helps us to prioritize the applications that the organization requires, so that we can embed those priorities into the day-to-day operations. This is the system of engagement. We've had a tremendous amount of success with it, and we'd love to talk with you more about it. So that's it. Terry, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thanks, Keith. Great job. And please type your questions into the question box, and we'll start right away. So the first question, and a couple of questions really get at this. Are these templates that are available for download, or maybe you can speak to the fact that each state DOT has sort of slightly different requirements, and kind of the generalizability of any of these particular applications, and how would a state sort of go about acquiring these?
Okay, so how to get to the applications? Well, a few years ago, maybe, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years ago, Esri went out to our customer base, and we really tried to understand how they were using our platform, right, our system back then. And we started to see these patterns that emerged. People were using for data management, for visualization, for operational awareness, for field mobility. And this was across every industry, not DOTs. But as those patterns became clear to us, what we knew we could do to add more value is to start to build these configurable applications that supported each one of those buckets, so to speak, on each one of those patterns. So for instance, field mobility, the application that the screenshots of the application I showed for the damage assessment, that is a configurable application. The application itself exists. Now, what we needed to do in order to make it work in that particular case for recovering from Hurricane Irma was configure it so that we ask the right questions, take the right pictures, and so on and so forth. So today, hundreds of these applications exist in the Esri stack, so to speak, that you can take advantage of for data management, for field mobility, for operational awareness. And when we go through this process, this discovery process, we match the needs that we're hearing from the folks that we engage with those capabilities in the stack.
So, okay, and so there's actually a question probably coming from somebody in maintenance. They saw that, I guess, on Stacey's demo, the maintenance, and so they said, what's in the maintenance category? Maybe you could speak to the wide variety of applications that have been developed for the various maintenance divisions and the various state DOTs.
Okay. Stacey, you want to take that one?
Sure. Yeah, the maintenance apps are probably the one division we end up getting the most app ideas out of, wouldn't you say, Keith? There just seems to be so many opportunities. So much of what they do is based on location. They need to know where stuff is, and they need to know information about that stuff, like, is it my responsibility to fix that kind of thing? So we actually have a pretty exhaustive list of maintenance type applications. A lot of them are mobile. and they involve, giving people the ability to make decisions in the field rather than having to come back to their maintenance shed. So I'm not sure if that completely answers the question. It would probably be exhaustive to go into all the types of maintenance apps that we have: guardrail, striping, all that kind of thing.
Yeah. So
yeah, Stacia, I'll just add one. Just one example, right? So one of the things we learned about going through this process, and frankly, I'm not even sure, I didn't know it existed in the maintenance group, was the fact that folks did nighttime inspections, right? Mm-hmm. So driving around at nighttime to identify where striping is poor, where reflectors are bad, signs are, don't have the retroreflectivity, lights are out under bridges, those types of things. And historically, that kind of work was done with somebody in driver's seat and then somebody with a notepad trying to determine where these things were, where these issues were, so they could turn it over to somebody on the day shift, right, to take care of it. And that is problematic, right? What's your reference when you're writing down that you have a sign that doesn't have good retroreflectivity as you're moving down the highway? These are always done at speed. Usually they are. How do you reference the location of that sign so that the people on the next shift can find it? Well, we learned about that and deployed an application called Quick Capture. So now instead of writing this information down in a book or on a notebook, right? They go by, they see a bad sign or a light out, hit a button, and it captures the location, and you know exactly what the issue is. So really significant improvement in efficiency and data sharing just with that particular app.
Yeah, and I'll very quickly add another. When you were back on the Colorado DOT and the various ranking, anybody that looks up in that upper left-hand box would actually see they wanted an application devoted to avalanche mitigation, and the real issue there was that literally they have a howitzer cannon that they fire into an area that is prone to avalanches. Well, not every one of those shells actually detonates, and so that causes a problem that they need to go back in the spring. And so, much as Keith said, they were typically writing that down on a yellow sheet of paper, and in fact, we created a very nice application, really sort of streamlined that workflow. And really that was one of the high value, very easy to develop applications. The snow maintenance folks are ecstatic over that particular application. So again, wide variety. These aren't, they're not huge applications. They're just configured to a very specific workflow. Next question, how might an organization capture app usage, both the metrics and the analytics? And can you provide any examples of how usage metrics and analytics might help an organization achieve or improve upon a system of engagement?
Wow, great question. Stacia, this is definitely in your wheelhouse.
This is something I'm passionate about. Because I completely agree. Keith and I say over and over again, we don't want to put technology in somebody's hands for technology's sake. Our litmus test is we're going to put it in your hands if it helps you do your job better, whatever better means for you. Could be more efficient, more accurate, save money, whatever that might be. And so what, how can we start showing some of that value? Well, a lot of it is just knowing who is using the apps and when they're using the apps and how often they're using the apps. So we've actually designed a dashboard that connects into these apps that can give you those kinds of metrics and statistics. And we've actually implemented at New York State DOT, and we're getting ready to implement it at some of our other project sites as well.
Okay, great. Thanks, Stacia. A couple of questions. Can this video be made available? Yes, it will be up on our website in roughly 2 to 4 days, so you can look for it on the Departments of Transportation, and it will be available as well as all the slides that you saw today. Next question is a good one, and so the focus is only on highways. What about the other modes? A lot of DOTs are also responsible for other modes. So maybe you can speak to that, Keith and Stacia.
Mm-hmm. I'll take this one, Stacia. So
Okay.
yeah, good question. I left the slide out, but we've actually done this work in transit agencies and at airports as well. And we're talking to some ports customers as well. So
If I,
and
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add to that. You know, at Idaho Transportation Department, we're actually within the DOT. We are working with their aviation team and we're actively building some apps for them right now.
Yeah, great point.
Yeah.
Great point. And I think actually at Louisiana, we built some applications for the ferry service.
Yes, that is right.
Yeah.
Ports and levees
Yeah.
and ferries. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ports and dams.
And so this methodology, it started in the DOTs, but we're actually seeing it expand out even outside of transportation at this point in time as well. So it's a methodology that works. It's scalable. It's scalable at the organizational enterprise level. It's even scalable down maybe to a division level as well.
Okay, and let's see, there's a question really about where are these services and applications housed? Are they in the cloud? Are they, so maybe you can speak to the different types of architectures that can be supported under a system of engagement.
Sure, I can take that one, Keith. That's all dependent on the customer. So we've had customers say we want to host this in-house and we can build an architecture for them, but more and more of our customers are going to the cloud. And so we've built infrastructures in both Azure and AWS for the SOE. So it's all dependent on what your needs are. So we can do both.
Okay.
Or we can do a hybrid, right?
Or a hybrid. That's correct.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So there's a question having to do with the materials samples and survey 123. Is there a case study? And interfacing with a laboratory information management system. And actually that gets back to a webinar that we did, roughly about a year ago, but maybe you could speak very briefly to that. And Stacia, I think even the Louisiana, the soil bore logs application. So if you want to speak to that.
I can speak to that. I don't know if it's quite the same thing. That was more of an environmental app where they were digging for cultural resources, and drawing on a piece of paper where they did their dig, how deep it was, what they found, and we were able to automate all of that using Survey 123 and dashboards. But we've identified a lot of apps that interface with a materials management system. But I don't know that we've built any quite yet.
Yeah, every DOT that we've done, a business track on, that workflow comes up
Yes.
because of what occurs during the construction process on, taking samples of the materials that are being placed, and then that getting put back into that management system. But I don't think to date that any of those have been in that super high value quadrant. And I don't believe we're moving forward on any at this point. And from an implementation
now in the project
However,
scoping app, yeah, I mean I did show like pavement cores and stuff like that. I think that was more some static information. So which we would prefer a live integration.
Okay, another question. Person says, I can see how state DOTs and local transportation agencies can use this system of engagement. But could you maybe speak to how a federal agency could use this? So the same concepts apply to any federal agency.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is that we're seeing this methodology expand outside of transportation. And there's no reason that it can't be applied at a federal agency as well. We go through the same process, right? The understand, plan, and act, and the same prioritization process really across the board. So from a conceptual standpoint, I really don't see anything different being applied here, right? The methodology would be about the same.
Right. And will the team develop a new app if there's none currently in your stack?
Yes. In fact, that quick capture app that I explained earlier, the nighttime inspection, we learned about that at Texas DOT, and that app was developed as a result. And we can also do custom build apps as well, if that's necessary. We try not to do that, right? We try to focus on the configurable versus the custom build. But if it's a need, and we do have the ability to custom build apps.
Okay, and we'll take one last question. Can county DOTs deploy a system of engagement with Esri?
That's an easy one. Yes.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
Right. Okay, fair enough. We have a whole series of further resources. As I mentioned, we do have a landing page. So we would encourage all of you to fill out the survey, which will appear on your screen right as we close this. We do want to thank all of you for attending today. We hope that you found this to be very valuable. As I said, we have found this to be really almost a new pattern of implementation, and so we do see tremendous uptake on this. So again, thank you all for joining us today, and Keith and Stacia, thank you as well. So, all right, well, with that, we'll close it out. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.